Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. In addition to my function as the director of the IP/IT LLM, I'm also the head of global engagement. So I'm especially welcoming those who are joining us today from other time zones, other than the Irish and the Central European one, of course. Um, I want to do two things in the next 15 to 20 minutes. To give you a broad introduction on the postgraduate programs that we're operating here at the Sutherland School of Law, and then also give you a bit of an impression of how studying at the Sutherland School of Law will look like once you have arrived here when we start our programs in September or in January. And this is simply a reflection of the fact that some of you have not decided whether they want to apply. They have applied. They're not sure where they want to go, so that everybody can get as much as possible out of not this conversation, but these three monologues that you'll be getting today from us. Unfortunately, we can't really see you yet. So the first thing I want to tell you is a bit about the offer that we have here at the Sutherland School of Law. We are, as an institution, one of Ireland's biggest law schools. We are one of the most international, or the most international law school that reflects in the sense that we have many agreements with other partner universities, but most importantly for you is that we have a very, very international student body that literally invites students every year from all around the globe to study with us across the range of our 11 postgraduate programs. And there are largely two categories of postgraduate programs. One are the pure LLM. So these are, I call them hardcore law programs, courses where you will only study law, and these are usually very, very specialized. And then you have so-called MSCs, but also one so-called Master of Common Law. And MSCs are at every institution where you will find them degrees that are a bit interdisciplinary, that combine two or more different areas from academia and give you a broader perspective. For example, an MSc in International Law and Business that my colleague Máire will talk about in a moment combines, as the name suggests, the areas of law and business, whereas the pure LLMs will discuss much more in depth a very specific area of the law, such as law and technology, such as EU law and governance, or criminology and criminal justice. Having said that, the degrees are largely built on the same program structure. So every degree that you study with us carries a specific, we call that ECTS, European Credit Transfer System load. That means you will be obliged to take a certain number of classes that correspond to a certain number of credits. And these are by and large 90 credits per degree, and they're distributed across what we do here in Ireland, 3 trimesters. One trimester is usually dedicated to a dissertation project. I'll come to that in a moment. But the majority of your time you'll be spending studying in a variety of different educational modes. So if you have 30 credits per semester, per trimester, that usually means you have 3 modules to complete in spring, 3 modules to complete in autumn, and then 1 trimester in which you complete your dissertation, or depending on the project, we also offer smaller alternatives to this dissertation project. As a general rule, we split the module load more or less equally. So most students take 3 modules in term 1, 3 modules in term 2, but there's also the possibility, depending on your preferences, to split 4-2 or 2-4 to front load or back load your workload. But this is really just depending on your preference, whether you have other obligations, whether you work on the side to a certain extent or have other responsibilities. This is the very, very basic setup. For all the specialization that we offer, there's a relatively basic rule. In order to receive a master specialization in the end, for example, my own LLM in IP and IT law, you are required to take a minimum of 4 courses, or 4 modules, we call them, from a set of core modules that is specific to the specialization that you might be enrolled into. So if you are, for example, let's take another degree, taking the LLM in criminology and criminal justice, there will be a core suite of modules that relate to this core subject area. And you have to take 4 courses from that area in order to qualify then for the specialization. The other 2 modules that remain, you can then take from the entire offer that we have at the School of Law. So if you have an LLM in criminology and criminal justice, you can of course also then take a course in basic human rights law, in one of the fields of intellectual property, environmental law, and so on and so forth. So simply to add a bit of variety to your academic diet at your time here at the Sutherland School of Law, but also nothing stops you from saying that you will only take courses from this core offering. But this is very, very important to understand. And of course, once you arrive here, we will guide you through this process. Now, one thing that we don't have time is to go through every single master specialization and to identify and walk you through the mandatory or the core courses, the core modules in these specific specializations. You will, of course, find them all on our website. And this is something that I try to avoid to give you too much information on what you can read on anyway. So if you're interested in one of the specializations and we don't have time to answer your questions, you will find a breakdown of all the courses on our website. And most importantly, you will also find a breakdown of all the modules in every single specialization on our website. And these breakdowns of modules include very, very important information, not only what you will be studying, but also how you will be studying. And this is one of the questions that I often get from my students, whether the course is offered in lecture form and seminar form, and also how the specific modules are being assessed. For example, whether there is an oral participation grade that some students tend to be afraid of, which actually isn't that complicated, whether certain courses are assessed by paper or by other type of coursework, or whether there are other elements. And often students have certain preferences as to how they want to be assessed. And this information you will find on our website. So even before you arrive in Dublin, this is all information that is relatively transparent on our website. And I always encourage students who are interested or have already committed to joining UCD to spend a bit of time on our website and to explore what courses there are and how these courses are operated. You can then also access the profiles of your lecturers, understand what their research is, what they do when they don't sit in the classroom and teach you and teach and learn with you. And these are all information that could be essential in deciding also if you, for example, want to do a PhD later on and are looking for a supervisor. But this is all the basic general information. Another thing that students always are very, very keen on trying to understand is how we teach at the Sutherland School of Law. And that really depends on the respective module director, so the person who gives the specific class. Every single one of my colleagues have certain preferences on how we teach, but also we align our teaching based on the course content. And quite simply, some contents lend themselves better to a more discursive environment, whether some technical subject matter are better taught in some form of a restricted seminar style or a lecture format. And this is something that really depends on the lecture and depends on the subject matter that you're learning here at the Sutherland School of Law. One thing that is very, very important to stress is that we take very good care of who we enroll in our degree. So we have certain qualitative thresholds. So you have a minimum 2.1 requirement in terms of academic performance prior to joining UCD. And that means we can pick which students we want. It also means we pick a certain number of students and we don't fill our classrooms as much as possible. That means the classes are relatively small. Usually a class is between 15 and 20 students. If a classroom gets crowded, it goes towards the 30, very, very rarely over 30 students per class. But in some courses, in some of the smaller specializations, you might be having classes in a relatively intimate environment with student numbers in single digits. But this is one of the charms that we have here at the School of Law. Number one, you'll be taught in smaller groups. You have more time to interact with your lecturers, and this is part of an LLM experience, that you not only consume knowledge, but you also have the opportunity to discuss your ideas, to discuss things that you see maybe differently than a lecturer. And we have certainly a classroom environment where we appreciate different opinions and we want to examine them, dissect them, and make sure that not you only learn something, but we also learn something from a relatively international student cohort. We are fortunate enough here at UCD that we have our own dedicated building, which is relatively young. And Una has promised me that she will put a link into the chat function where you can do a virtual tour of the building. The advantage of our building is that all our professors are under one roof, which is very good in a country where it rains a lot. And we also have all the seminar rooms that we need in our building. That means in 99% of the cases, you'll be studying for your entire within one building. Every now and then, when a class takes place very early or we really get into troubles with our room booking, we might have a class in a different building, but then you are on one relatively contained campus, and the ways between buildings are relatively short. It's a beautiful green campus. We're right next to a small little lake. There's another lake on campus, and on UC's campus, you find all the facilities that you need to study successfully, but also most importantly to study in a community of scholars and learners. So this is the general information I want to give you. I want to lose a few words on the dissertation module, which will be mandatory for most of you. As is practiced in most institutions that I've taught, and I've studied it, an LLM is traditionally concluded by a larger research project, which will be written usually in the summer term. So after we conclude our assessments in spring, which is usually mid-May, you will then have from June to August to complete a dissertation of around 40 pages. So at least when I was young, that wasn't necessarily too much. But of course, we help you to structure your dissertation process. We have a dedicated dissertation class where we have a staff member who walks you in a number of sessions through the entire process, from exploring a topic, finding a topic, researching a topic, and then structuring your dissertation. And at that point, which is usually in December, we assign you a dedicated dissertation supervisor with whom you will then meet a number of times on a number of occasions and discuss with the supervisor your first thoughts, your progress towards an elaborate research proposal, a first draft of a chapter, and that person will be available to you until you submit your dissertation, which is usually in mid to end August, when we then take over and obviously have to grade it. But we really want to make sure, and we also understand that most of you probably haven't written a work of that magnitude, that you have the resources in terms of human support, but also the institutional support in terms of an excellent library that will enable you to do the dissertation to the best of your abilities. And usually we quite like to read these dissertations because we get new perspectives on stuff that we have been teaching. And I'm usually quite looking forward to receiving the final dissertations. Now, I was asked to lose at least a few words on my own degree. So I'm the director of the LLM in Intellectual Property Law and Information Technology Law. I'm the intellectual property part. So my background is in copyright and more concretely, European digital copyright law. And we also, of course, have colleagues who cover the other aspects in information technology law and so on and so forth. And this degree is particularly interesting, of course, for students in Dublin. Dublin is the tech capital in the European Union, or in the larger area, I want to say east of the United States of America. And we use it to our benefit. We offer you a degree that covers the basics of intellectual property information technology, so online regulation, copyright law, patent law, but also courses in AI regulation and so on and so forth. Simply to give you a good foundation. We don't expect that you have prior knowledge of these areas, but in our courses, we relatively quickly move from an introductory level to the discussion of advanced topic in these areas, because this is then our handover from more specialized LLMs to the labor market. We want to make sure that when you leave UCD, you are ready to apply, to successfully apply, and work in our partners in the industry, in public administration, in governance, and so on and so forth. So for the LLM and IP, that means we offer you courses in, as I said already, copyright law. Data protection is a very, very important field for us in the European Union, but also fields of data governance. And what has become much more important in the recent years, we have relatively fresh courses in online governance, online regulations, cybersecurity, and AI regulation. These are courses that we revise on a yearly basis because things change so quickly. So when you take one of these modules, you can be reassured that what you're learning is the latest information on these topics. And it is also very important to keep in mind that all our lecturers are research intensive. That means not only do we teach, not only do we do our administration, which is also part of academia, but we also engage heavily in world-leading research. So we go to conferences, we write our books, and we write our articles. And what we write, we of course also teach, which is always a good opportunity for us to see whether our crazy ideas are actually accessible to the wider public. So you get the benefit of cutting edge research, not only from us, but of course also from our colleagues. in research, but also in industry. The degree, in essence, is built as all the other degrees. What is maybe important, or at least interesting for you to know, is what happens after you graduate. Obviously, after you finish an LLM, you have largely two or three choices. Either you continue in academia, which is not everybody's cup of tea. Most of our graduates obviously go either to law firms or to industry, and we're quite happy that we can usually place our students in leading law firms in Ireland, in London, and across Europe, but also in the United States and other parts of the world. And of course, we have the benefit that we have a relatively healthy economic sector here in Ireland. So you will find our graduates not only in the classical legal professions in law firms, but also in public administration, in governance. Also, the big consulting companies are happy to take our graduates. We have many graduates in the financial sector. And of course, also here in Dublin in the tech industry. So we have graduates from our LLMs in all the big tech companies, whether it's Meta, whether it's Alphabet, whether it's Stripe, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's Ancestry. We're quite happy to have graduates in all these institutions. And as much as we can, we also draw on their expertise. So every now and then we take this as our advantage and invite them to teach in our courses. One example would be that we're quite happy to have one of our graduates working in a leading position in OpenAI. And if I want to relax in my AI regulation course, I invite her to give a session on data protection law, she's much more an expert than I am. And you then really get industry insights. You get insights not only on how the law works, but also how the law then interacts with technology. And this is something that we're not unique in, but we're very, very good placed compared to our European and global competitors, that we have this, in that sense, very unique combination between an excellent university. We are top 100 ranked in the world as a law school, and the hotspot for the legal industry in relation to law and technology. But this is also true for other areas that we teach across the range of our degrees. So this is it for me for the moment. Basic introduction to LLMs, but also more specifically the LLM and IPIT. And now I want to hand over, before we start answering your questions, to my colleague Máire, who will talk about the MSc in International Law and Business, but also to a certain extent the LLM in International Commercial Law. Máire, over to you.
Thanks, Justin, and hello everyone, and thanks for joining us today. So as Justin and Una mentioned, I'm the director of an interdisciplinary degree. That's the MSc in International Law and Business. And as the name suggests, students on this programme are studying law and business, the two alongside one another. So the structure is more or less as Justin outlined. You're taking 3 subjects in the autumn trimester, 3 subjects again in the spring trimester. You've a pretty significant choice. I think it's more than 30 modules. Now, it varies a little bit from year to year, depending on whether colleagues are on research leave or not. So exactly what modules are on the list in a given year depends and varies a little bit. But this year, there were more than 30 modules for students on this MSc programme to choose from. And in terms of the interrelationship between the law modules and the business modules, there is a real synergy and complementarity between some of the modules offered on the law side and some of the modules offered on the business side. For example, if you're interested in the environment, on the law side, you can study climate change law, environmental law, and on the business side, you have sustainable production. So you're looking at supply chain management and logistics from the perspective of minimizing harm to the environment from a business perspective. Similarly, you can do a corporate governance module on the law side. So you're looking at external control and supervision of companies. And you can also do a corporate governance module on the business side, looking at corporate governance from a business management perspective and at the management of risk in particular. Also, in terms of competition, there are 2 law modules concerned with regulation of competition law, so European competition law, international competition law, And then on the business side, you have 2 modules dealing with competitive strategies, one from a marketing perspective, one from a management perspective. So if you like, if you're taking this program, you can combine insights from the regulatory side, from the law side, with insights from the other side of the fence, from the shop floor, if you like, the operational side. Now, you don't have to do that. There's a significant choice, as I mentioned earlier. So you can, if you prefer, you can just pick the particular modules that interest you. But you do have this opportunity to pick law modules and business modules that converge around the same themes. In terms of how the year pans out on the MSc, you start in September. You have orientation initially, then you're doing 3 law modules. So you have 6 hours of classes per week during that initial autumn trimester. So you have 2 hours for each of your 3 law modules. You also begin with some of your dissertation training. Justin mentioned this before. At the end of that autumn trimester, you have a seminar with your program director. So that's me if you're on the MSc program. That's Justin if you're doing the LLM in IP and IT. And at that initial seminar with your program director, you have your initial research question, and you're giving a little presentation on that, on why you chose that question, and getting feedback from your program director and some questions from your classmates. So that's the first trimester. You may only have 6 hours per week of class time, but you will actually be much busier than that. So it's not just a matter of showing up for class for 6 hours a week. You will be very busy with assignments and various other group projects and tasks. You may have some exams in December. So a lot of our modules are continuous assessment only. Some others do have an exam component. As Justin said, you can look online if you want to know in advance what the assessment strategy is for a given module. You can find all of that up on our website. So that's the first trimester, the autumn trimester. Then in January, we usually have some new students joining the program. Justin mentioned that across our master's programs generally, most students start in September, but a significant enough number will start in January and then complete the following December instead. So we'll have some new students joining us. And in that spring trimester, the second trimester, the MSc students are taking 1 law module plus 2 business modules. Now, all of the law teaching, as Justin mentioned, is on the Belfield campus, the main UCD campus. The business modules are taught on a separate campus, the Smurfit Business School down in Blackrock. Now, moving between the 2 campuses is very easy. There is a very regular bus service. It takes maybe 10-15 minutes to run down on the bus from the Belfield campus to the Blackrock Smurfit campus. I don't know if you're familiar with the Smurfit campus. It's a beautiful old campus. The Belfield campus, as Justin mentioned, is a lovely campus as well, but a very modern campus. And a big campus. The Smurfit campus is a much smaller campus. It's a graduate business environment, only beautiful old buildings by the sea. So I think personally it's a real treat to go down to that really lovely old campus for some of your teaching in the spring trimester. During that spring trimester, as well, as Justin mentioned, you are starting in earnest on your work on your dissertation. So you have 3 supervision meetings with your supervisor. As Justin mentioned, you're allocated a dedicated supervisor around late December, early January, and you have 3 meetings with that supervisor. So they're helping you to develop your research question and to get started in earnest on your dissertation. So again, you've only 6 hours of teaching per week, but it is actually, and I know this, I've recently had meetings with my dissertation supervisees, and they've been telling me how incredibly busy this teaching trimester has been. They're trying to complete continuous assessment, trying to move forward with their dissertation. The spring trimester teaching then finishes in April, and some students will have exams in May or be submitting final assessment papers in May. And then most students are then just working on their dissertation up to early August when they submit the dissertation. There is, however, an alternative option for MSc students, and that is the arbitration project. So instead of doing the dissertation, if you opt for the arbitration project, you don't do the dissertation. And the arbitration project takes place mainly in June. It involves a lot of interactive workshops with arbitration practitioners. You get to present a case as you would in a real arbitration. You're taught how to write an arbitration award. So it's a very hands-on, practical exercise in learning about the world of arbitration. And that option is there. And I know this year some of the MSc students on the programme this year have opted to do the arbitration project instead of writing a dissertation. So it's really a question of whether you really enjoy individual research, reading lots of books and cases and journal articles, or whether you really enjoy the hands-on side of law, which is what the arbitration project offers. I should say as well, most students on the MSc in International Law and Business will choose a dissertation topic. If they do the dissertation, they'll usually choose a dissertation topic that's at the interface of law and business. So usually some aspect of commercial law that really interests the student and that builds on some area that they have been discussing in class with their lecturer. So I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say a little bit more. Una, is there time for me to say a little bit more? I might say a little bit so about the LLM in international commercial law. So that's a master's, again, a master's on which I do some teaching. I do some of the teaching on the trademark law module, and I do all of the teaching in a module on cross-border commercial litigation. And on this master's, again, the structure as Justin outlined, you're doing 3 law modules in the autumn trimester, 3 law modules in the spring trimester. So you're not doing any business modules in Smurfit if you're doing the LLM in international commercial law. It's all law modules, and you're choosing from a fairly generous menu of law modules with a very strong commercial flavour. In terms of the careers, in preparing for this seminar, I was looking at where our recent graduates, both on the MSc and on the LLM in international commercial law, what our recent graduates have gone on to do. And on the LLM programme, there is a strong tendency towards the traditional legal careers. So if you do a Google search for the UCD LLM in international commercial law, you will see that an awful lot of our graduates are now practicing solicitors in Dublin, in London. There are barristers at the Irish Bar with this qualification as well. Now, not all of the graduates end up in those traditional legal careers. There are quite a few graduates as well working in professional services firms. On the MSc, there are some of the graduates certainly working in traditional legal careers with big law firms in Ireland and abroad, for example. But there is a stronger tendency, as you might expect, to embark on careers in business. So certainly looking at the graduates from the last couple of years, there seem to be quite a few of the graduates working in tax consultancy, which is, I think, a very good combination of or entails a very good combination of the skills developed from the law and business side of the MSc program. So you're, as a tax consultant, you're interpreting legislation using legal skills, but tax consultants are looking at things from a business perspective, not just from a regulatory perspective. So the MSc graduates, I think, to a lesser extent, embark on traditional legal careers. So they often embark on careers that demand some knowledge of law, but are not centered around law in quite the same way. In terms of studying in UCD generally, I think Justin has already highlighted a lot of the advantages of studying here, the small classes, the quality of the staff. I would encourage you to have a look at the profiles of the staff in the areas in which you're interested in studying. I think apart from that, the campus offers a lot in terms of student life. So here in the law school, there are a lot of law adjacent activities. You can do mooting and debating. You can get involved in law review. There's a negotiation competition. So there are a lot of law adjacent activities all the time. Next week, there's a festival of research, and all of the students are invited to attend various seminars in areas that they might be interested in. There are also many careers events. There's a big careers festival every October where prospective employers come to campus to meet students that they would be interested in employing. Also, more generally, there's a huge array of sporting activities. If you're interested in yoga, in dance, so the campus caters for all tastes. So there's very much the law school side of things and the social activities within the law school, and then the social and sporting activities on the campus more generally. So I might leave it there, Una, if that's all right. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Justin and Máire. Now, we've actually had a lot of very enthusiastic questions here, and I know that Justin is going to answer some of them live himself, so I won't read them out.
Good. So if you agree, Una, I will simply take some of the questions, and then everything that I've forgotten, you might simply push my way. But also do keep on sending your questions. We won't be able to answer all of them, largely due to time concerns. Of course, we have all the answers. Now, the first question is how closely our curriculum is shaped by emerging legal developments. Absolutely 100%. But this has to do with two factors. Number one, we are an excellent institution, and there's a good reason for it, because not only do we teach a lot, but also we are recognized for our research, for impact, but also for societal engagement. Just to give you one example, and I can say that because I do this, not only are we academics, we are lecturers, we are researchers, but many of us also engage either directly in the profession, so they practice on the side as barristers or solicitors, or we do other types of consulting. And of course, these consultings are usually cutting edge issues that feed back in our teaching. So we are being faced by questions that are emerging there, for which there simply are no answers. And every now and then I simply ask my students what they think about it, because I couldn't possibly know an answer, but we're there to speculate and to advise companies and policy actors, NGOs, on emerging legal developments. My desk, if you could see it, is full with recent case law with requests for comments and so on and so forth. So absolutely 100%. We teach because we're interested in the latest developments, and this is also then, of course, reflected in our teaching. And this also is the difference between an LLM, so an advanced degree, and an undergrad degree. At an undergraduate level, you learn the basics of the law, how contracts work, how the state is organized, and so on and so forth. You also get to know certain advanced topics, but the LLM is really where you shape your profile. And this has to happen, at least in my opinion, and in our school's opinion, against the background of the latest legal development. Otherwise, quite frankly, we probably wouldn't be doing our job very well. So you can rest assured, whatever I teach, whatever my colleagues teach, is the latest of technology, the latest of legal developments. Unless it happens the day before, then we might need a week to recover that to a certain extent. One very simple question. Whether you need to be on campus while writing the dissertation, short answer, no, not necessarily. You have all the resources that we offer 99% online, certainly when you are in more advanced legal areas that have a certain, not volatility, but dynamism. You don't have to be on campus. Most of our students also then start doing internships. Maybe they already have a job offer, they go somewhere else. And you don't have to be on campus. What we then facilitate, if you need supervision whilst you're abroad, we can facilitate this via Zoom. Usually it's the student who requests this. We tend to be here during summer. But no, you don't need to be on campus while you write your dissertation. If you want to, of course, you can stay here. We're not going to throw you out. But we fully understand that during summer, you might want to be somewhere more sunny. But you also want to start your career immediately after you finish your teaching. But of course, you should leave sufficient time to in earnest and significantly engage with your dissertation, because that will still form part of your final grade. Another question which I haven't answered so far, obviously, is the question, what do you do in the normal LLM, so the LLM without a specialization? And the suggestive question is absolutely correct that I'm reading here on my screen. The LLM General is the only one where you can pick any courses that you want to. So you're not restrained by any core offerings of modules. You can pick from the entire offer of legal courses that we offer at the Sutherland School of Law. I always have to say at this point in time, subject to availability. So some of the courses, 1 or 2 or 3 maybe maximum, are so popular simply because the rooms are getting too small. We have to keep enrollment at usually 30, 34. And I had to do that the first time in my career at UCD for my eye regulation course. Every now and then we have to make hard decisions to cap off the course because it is simply oversubscribed. But when we say oversubscribed, it's not 150 students, it is 30, 35 students. I think there's 1 or 2 more classes that enroll higher than 35 students. But there's a very simple limitation. That's our seminar room size, but also the very simple fact that we want to teach in a certain format. And at a certain class size, it simply gets too difficult to manage active participation, a discursive classroom environment. If we have 50 students sitting around and everybody wants to say something, there we have to make the hard decision that we cap class size. But in principle, as an LLM student, that is an LLM general student, you can take any module that you want to. You will have to take the dissertation, however. That's a non-negotiable for us in that sense. Now, there are a few questions left. That's a really, really good question. So what job supports are available for students that are non-EU but that want to enter the Irish job market? There's a very, very difficult question. So there are 2 options that, or 2 perspectives from which you can approach it. Whenever you enter a different jurisdiction, and it is also true for non-Irish law students who come to UCD, you cannot immediately with an LLM enter into the classical legal professions. In Ireland, that being solicitor and barrister, but you need to comply with additional qualification requirements. You have to take additional exams, a practical educational period, and then you can qualify. This is what Irish students then often tend to do after completing their bachelor's degree. Foreign students would have to comply with these requirements. For European Union students, there's usually a short track. But if you come from a jurisdiction outside the European Union, and if you have a basic law degree, you still will have to qualify. As opposed to American-style JD programs, an LLM does not prepare you to sitting the relevant professional examinations. LLMs are highly specialized. The qualifications are based on a basic understanding of the law. So you need to understand Irish contract law, Irish public law, Irish criminal law, and so on and so forth. This is nothing that we do at LLM level. So this is important to understand. A European LLM is not a preparation to sit the bar examinations or the equivalents in the respective jurisdiction, but this is not different in any other European jurisdiction. So this is nothing that we can offer directly. Of course, we can offer you advice on how to transition into these professions, and we have many students who have successfully done so. So number one, you can draw on our alumni base, and we make for opportunities to meet our alumni at job fairs, at career events, specifically designated or directed to non-EU students. And of course, EU students are always invited to join as well. We have an excellent career services on campus who will not only advise you on finding a right position opening, but also will help you to train in terms of writing a proper application, training for the interview. I heard we even use artificial intelligence to prepare you in a self-directed way for job interviews. So these are all services we offer on campus. And of course, several times a year, we do invite employers to our law school to present their companies. And these are opportunities where you can get in touch with HR departments, partners from law firms, professionals from industry, and ask them those questions. One problem with employment is always the field is very, very dynamic. But of course, we offer you all the support that a university can possibly offer you. We cannot offer you a job directly. This is not the task of university. But we can prepare you in terms of subject matter, in terms of excellence, but also in terms of all the soft skills through training, through offers that you can simply book yourself into to meet with our career guidance counselors and make yourself fit to enter the Irish job markets. One other question that I think I might have answered, but I'll repeat it anyway. How many hours, how many person lectures are you expected to attend within the program? So for an LLM or an MSc, it's always 6 modules, so 6 program units for the entire duration of the course. That means you usually have 3 modules per trimester, which usually translates into, and this is classic for an LLM, around 6 to 8 contact hours per week. The majority of an LLM is advanced preparation, revision, condensation, synthesization of learned material. The classroom, the contact hours are relatively limited in LLMs, and this will be more or less around 6 to 8 during an advanced degree. So law is not a lab work environment, but loads of the time will be directed exercises, directed tasks, preparing, reading, reflection tasks, and so on and so forth.
I was going to
Yeah.
suggest that maybe I direct one of the questions there to
Good.
Máire, which was in relation to specifically the LLM International Commercial Law program. Someone is asking about how practical it is in terms of its real world application.
Well, it's allowing you to develop expertise in specialist aspects of commercial law. So if you're intending to go on to practice, now, as Justin said, an LLM doesn't allow you to go on and practice. You have to qualify as a solicitor or a barrister separately. But if you are intending to go into legal practice, through the LLM, you can develop specialist knowledge that allows you then to work within particular units of international law firms. You have the specialist knowledge that's required to work in a particular area, like data protection, like competition law. So you in going for interviews, you have an advantage over other candidates in that you already are developing this specialist knowledge and a curiosity. You know, if you develop real interest in one of these areas, and that's the hope with an LLM, that, you know, you go into subjects to some extent blind, you don't know quite what to expect. But usually on an LLM, there will be some subjects that really capture your imagination, that you really begin to enjoy. And you think, this is an area that I would actually really like to practice in. And then when you go for a job interview, you share that enthusiasm, and the interviewers can see that you're actually really interested in a particular area and in working in a particular area. So I think it does give you a real advantage in the jobs market to have an LLM. And I've seen lots of LLM graduates. When I was preparing for this seminar last night, I was looking at particular graduates that I got to know when I was teaching them and looking at where they are now. And quite a few of them are actually working directly in the area in which they were studying when they were in UCD. And often the reason I remember these students is because they were really engaged in class. They really got into the subject. They really loved the subject, and that's where they've ended up working. So the way the modules are taught, it is academic teaching, so it's conceptual, it's theoretical, but it has a significant practical dimension in that all of these commercial law areas are also areas of legal practice. So I hope that answers the question. Thank you.
Thanks, Máire, and thanks, Justin. I think that was very interesting, and I hope our audience, which was, as I said, a very strong audience today, I hope they got the answer to all of their questions in relation to our programs. We will have a recording of this available, and I will send a link to it to all the participants. But please do follow up with any questions. You have the email, it's law_postgraduate@ucd.ie. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Dr. Jutte. Thank you, Dr. Shúilleabháin. And we look forward to seeing all of our participants in the future in UCD. Thank you.